If I walk in the pathway of duty, if I work to the close of the day, I shall see the great King in his beauty. When I've gone the last mile of the way, when I've gone the last mile of the way, I'll rest. I said I'll rest. I'm gonna rest. I'll rest at the close of the day. And I know there are joys, Lord, waiting for me when I've gone the last mile of the way.
All Scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness, that the man of God may be competent, equipped for every good work.
It's the snap when he appears earlier first in the home of the high priest. You remember, one of the things that you get when you read all these accounts is you see that he's getting spit on an awful lot. You can imagine that. Why, when you're beating a man and covering him at one point, covering his face, and saying, prophesy and tell us who's hitting you, why would you go to the trouble to spit on him? You're going to kill him anyway. Is it really necessary to go to all of this trouble? And the answer seems to be it is necessary, because we're human beings. We are cruel by nature.
Kind of insult.
They just cannot mean it, but it's like picking on someone who's not only defenseless, but in this case innocent. Not one of these people has a charge against him. It's meaningful. When the high priest accuses him, he says, well, he claimed to be the Son of God. He claimed to be the Messiah, that's enough. See, at least he had drummed up something that he could charge him with that had a good ring to it. The other people, most of them, I suspect, they had no idea. These are just people running around lots during a riot. You follow me? What are you doing? I don't know. The other people are breaking windows, I'm breaking windows. What sense does it make that make? But you'll see it. The soldiers of the governor took him to the praetorium and gathered the whole garrison around him. And they stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him. When they had twisted a crown of thorns, they put it on his head and a reed in his right hand. And they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews. Then they spat on him. And they took the reed and struck him on the head. When they had mocked him, they took the robe off him and put his own clothes on him and led him away to be crucified. So they make sport of him. They spit on him. He doesn't answer. He could have spoken and they would all have fallen dead. If you remember, shortly before this, when they tried to arrest him in the garden, Peter pulls a sword, cuts off a man's ear. Jesus says, I am he you're looking for, and they all fall down. Why? He had the ability to make them all fall down. You understand? This is God they're talking to. And yet God is surrendering himself. And he's surrendering himself to these men who just can't crucify him. They have to torture him. And they do. So they put this crown on him, and they kneel down, and they mock him, and they say, Hail, King of the Jews. And the whole time, he is the King of the Jews. And he's more than the King of the Jews. He doesn't say a word. He's on a mission. That mission is he's come to die on Bill Moore's behalf. He's not going to let anybody stop him. It's simple. He's going to show up. He's going to go through with it. No matter what they do, no matter how many people desert him, he's come to save Bill Moore, and he's going to. That's it. That was the agreement he made, and he's going to do it. And he's just going to show who he is and that he loves. Now, as they came out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. Him they compelled to bear his cross. Jesus is too weak at this point. They've been beating him. We missed the part where they beat him with the whip that had 9 tails or whatever. The cat of 9 tails, some people say. But basically, the way it would work is they would have a handle, maybe a foot long, it seems 14 inches. They'd have these strands of leather come out of it. On the end, they would put glass or metal or something. And then they'd strip him down, bend him over, and beat him with it. Till his legs and buttocks and back would all be raw. And he'd be bleeding so badly. He's about to, by the time that blood would coagulate, they'd crucify him so that stuff could break open on a rough beam. And he utters not a word, but he's losing blood. And he's weak. And the cross is heavy. And the trip to Golgotha is a little in the distance, so he can't seem to manage it. And they compel this man from northern Africa to carry his cross. And when they had come to a place called Golgotha, that is to say, the place of a skull, they gave him sour wine mingled with gall. But when he had tasted it, he would not drink. Then they crucified him and divided his garments, casting lots, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet. They divided my garments among them. See that? Psalm 22, where we were reading earlier. They divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. Jesus knew that was going to happen. Why? He'd read Psalm 22. He was a good Bible student. Now remember, what's really going to happen in those things is they're going to take this beam, they're going to lay him down on it, they're going to drive these spikes through his wrist, probably more than his hand, through his feet on a little piece of wood that would allow him to pull up and seek breath once in a while. And his back is torn up, and then they're going to pick it up and drop it into a hole, much like you would a fence post. Right? Now, if you were the one, how do you think that feels when they drop it in there and it thuds? And those nails are in your feet, and you're trying to breathe. But I want you to remember, God purposed that he would do this, and Jesus willingly did it. This is why he came. He came for this day. He didn't come for all the other reasons that people say. He came for this day. He lived, and he came to this moment knowing it would be his moment. And in fact, it's a glorious moment in his life. Remember, when you and I see him suffering, we're saying, man, this got to stop. He's saying, it will stop, and Bill Moore's going to be eternally with me for this reason. It's okay. This is why I came. This is the day I conquered, even though it looked like I failed. You see, we misunderstood. Everybody there that day, the Jewish leaders thought they had won. They finally snuffed him out. They had in fact lost. Right? The people who mocked him had good sport and thought they'd never think of it again. They're still in hell today, a lot of them, thinking about spitting on it. Okay? The disciples were there. They felt they had to flee and hide because all their dreams had been dashed. This wasn't Palm Sunday with everybody shouting Hosanna. This is now over. Their dream is over and they're about to be arrested too. They're worried about themselves. They were wrong. Everybody who's in that picture is wrong. They've got the wrong understanding of what's happening. Only one person understood what was happening, and he was the one being crucified. You see, he was coming to triumph that day. There's never been anything like it. Nothing close to it. No other religion can come with such power as this one. You see, all these contrivances to make Lorenzo a little better man are just that, contrivances. Christianity just says this world's a wreck. There's only one way this is going to be changed, and God himself is going to do it. Bill Moore's not going to pick himself up by his bootstraps and make the world better. I'm going to do it for him. So that sitting down, verse 36, sitting down, they kept watch over him there. And they put up over his head the accusation written against him. This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. Now you remember in some of the other Gospels, you'll find that when that sign goes up, the religious leaders run to Pilate. And they say, take that sign down. Put up the sign that says, this is Jesus, who said he was the King of the Jews. But Pilate, being a godless man, but yet under God's control, says, what I've written, I've written. Go on, beat it. Beat it. The sign's fine. Little did he know that God was in fact using him to proclaim to history, he's right. This is the King of the Jews. This is the King of the universe right here. Now the ones I'm interested in, verse 38 and 44, you'll see these two characters that I wanted to talk about this week. It's going to be next week. Then 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and another on the left. Look at verse 44. Even the robbers who were crucified with him reviled him with the same thing. So you don't hear that in Mark's gospel. One does. But you can see here you need all these gospel accounts to get this straight. A long period's going here. These men are getting crucified. You'll see next week one of them's going to say to the other one, don't you have any fear of God at all? We actually deserve this. Why? We're guilty. We're robbers. We deserve it. This day of execution has been set. We're going to get executed. But he doesn't deserve it. He says, one of them says to the other one, why would you mock him? He doesn't deserve this. Somewhere in this process, one of them remains blind and one of them gets his sight. You understand? Now, you'll see when we look at it closely that he's really going to say to Jesus, this one robber who's dying, he looks at Christ dying with spit on him, with this crown of thorns, with blood running down his cheeks and his face all swollen. Remember that passage that said there was nothing, no beauty in him, no comeliness that we should see him, in any kind of positive way. You see all these things, and you say, everybody's mocking the religious leaders, and this guy turns to him and says, Jesus, will you remember me when you come into your kingdom? Tell me how that works. What is that? But the Holy Spirit moving on this man. Otherwise, tell me what he saw that could make him say such a thing at such a moment. A week earlier, yes. Perhaps 48 hours earlier. Now, the man is dying next to you. Okay? And you're going to turn to him and say, I know you're a king. When you come into your kingdom, you remember me, please. I've done wrong. That's what he does. He repents, you see, of this thing that Jesus says to him, today you'll be with me in paradise. You think Jesus was worried about where he was going after he expired? He knew the story. He knew the end of this thing. He knew where he was going. He was about to triumph. At the very moment when he's dying is the moment he wins. It doesn't look like it. Why? We don't see very well. That's all. Now you'll see this. And those who had passed by blasphemed him, wagging their heads and saying, you who destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If you're the Son of God, come down from the cross. See, there's just this period of 6 hours, the whole bench gone 9 hours. They just can't resist getting after him. As if that, why? What is it in people that would do that? Likewise, the chief priests also mocking with the scribes and elders said, here are the very men who were the most learned men, right, about the scriptures. These are the men that God had entrusted with the truth. These are the men who made the sacrifices on behalf of the people. These are the men to whom Jesus should have been precious, waiting for the Messiah. Instead, they're mocking him and leaving the people in it. Why? They had this vision of a Messiah that was so puny that he would come and somehow deliver them from the Romans. Whoop-de-doo. Wow. That was their view. After all these things, they were that ignorant to think this is what he was coming to do. Deliver them from the Romans. When in fact, he was coming to deliver them from sin. And not just them in some year in the middle of history, but all men who believed in him throughout history. This is what he was doing. They just simply did not understand Isaiah 53. They knew Isaiah. They could quote Isaiah. These guys wore little things on, little scripture verses on their foreheads. They had all kinds of things written on them on their doorposts. But they missed the point. They didn't understand. So then you can see it. He is the king of Israel. Let him come down. We will believe him. He had just resurrected Lazarus. You understand? When he resurrected Lazarus, it's just a short while before. And how did they believe him? They tried to kill him and Lazarus for it. You understand? Lazarus was dead. He gets resurrected. That's good news. He sees his sisters again. Here's the bad news. They want to kill you. Lazarus just got back. You understand? Think about it. So they say, well, if he performed this miracle, we believe in him. Really? What about that miracle? What about the blind man they threw out of the temple? They don't say that the man wasn't blind. They know he's blind from birth. The blind man, they question the blind man. They say to him, what happened? And he said, look, all I know is that man over there, I was blind, now I see. I don't know. You take it up with him. This much I'm going to tell you, I can see. They said, well, he's done this miracle. We can see that. They see the miracle, and they throw the blind man out. They get mad at his parents, and then they come to Jesus. And you're saying, if all they needed was a miracle, they would have already believed him. So they lie again here. Peter got him down off the cross. They didn't rush at him to put him back up there. You understand? These are foolish people. So, even the robbers who were crucified with him reviled him the same thing. Now, you're going to see here another passage real quickly in 45. Now, from the 6th hour until the 9th hour, from noon to 3, there's darkness over the land, which I'm sure was plenty spooky. It's dark. Not 3 minutes, 3 hours. There's a lot going on in the dark. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice. Listen what he says. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? Look back at the beginning of the Bible study. Psalm 22, verse 1. My God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus is quoting the 22nd Psalm. Think about that. Think he's a Bible student? He's quoting that psalm, written 1,000 years before. And watch these people. Some of those who stood there when they heard that said, this man is calling for Elijah. They misunderstand him again. Like he's asking for Elijah to come and save him. He's God. He's Elijah's creator. You understand? Elijah needed him. He didn't need Elijah. Immediately they ran, took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, put it on a reed and offered it to him. The rest said, let him alone. Let us see if Elijah will come to save him. And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice, and he yielded up his spirit. Elsewhere we learn, he said, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. It is finished, he privately says, which is, of course, a very important thing. Meaning, what does he mean when he says it's finished? He means that Bill Moore's punishment, right, is finished. If you're a believer, when you see him there, you have to recognize the fact that in God's way of doing things, this Jesus is dying for what you've done. But he pays the penalty. If you don't believe it, you just watch him. He's paying the penalty. And you have to ask yourself, is it really that complex or really that simple? It's both. This is a God who can die, so he has an infinite amount of merit to cover Tim's sin, Bill Moore's sin, the Apostle Paul's sin. This is God. This isn't just some mere man dying. On the other hand, it is that simple. that the simplest person can understand it. Lorenzo, you owed a debt and I'm paying it.
Appreciate it.
That's exactly what happens. You think about it. If you go to the bank and you owe them $200, right? And they're harassing you, and I go to the bank and pay your $200, do they call you on the next day and say, Lorenzo, you owe us $200, and they say your debt's paid? Your debt's paid. I paid it. It doesn't matter that you didn't pay. That debt is paid. I had a right to pay it to Lorenzo. That's as simple as I can make it in what Christianity proclaims. It's absolutely the truth. But what you'll notice, and I'll touch again next week, there's people there around the cross. Why do they not see it? Why do they not? Forget their cruelty. Why don't they see it? Why doesn't his mother believe he's going to resurrect in 3 days? Well, it's overpowering to watch him die. This has been going on. They've been watching since early morning, watching him get beaten, watching him pull up on his feet and try to catch his breath. You're watching 3 men die. Now you remember that because it's getting late in the day and they want to get these guys dead, sometimes guys would take a few days to die by crucifixion. Strong men. Jesus is weak. So they go over with a mallet to break the legs of the people on the cross because they want to get this done. The sun's going to go down on them. So they go to the first thief and they have to break his legs. Think about what that is. You're already in misery, dying. What a cruel invention this crucifixion was. And they were famous for it. They bust his legs so that he can't push up on them. And when you can't push up, you can't get the lungs cleared enough to get air in them, then you're going to die. Are they doing him a favor? I suppose they are. I don't know. They bust the legs of the second one, and they come to Jesus, and he's dead. And you'll see that when they go to Pilate, Joseph of Arimathea, who's the rich man, remember he said, in a rich man, in death, he'd be with a rich man kind of idea. If you remember that in Isaiah. Well, he's saying, look, what happened is, this secret disciple, Joseph of Arimathea, who's well known, goes to Pilate, says, I want his body. He says, is he dead already? He's surprised. Why? It wasn't normal. He shouldn't have already been dead. They should have had to say, well, he wasn't dying quickly enough. We busted his legs so that he couldn't breathe. It's not what happened. Why? The prophecy was that none of his bones would be broken. How many of them knew that day? None. Well, Tim needed to know it today, that's why. So when you see these thieves or you see these people around there, you have to ask yourself, Christianity demands that you deal with this issue. Is it real? It's not some mystical thing. Christianity is a historical religion saying this happened on a certain day, and it's provable. Now, if that's not true, then Christianity is just a sham. It has no power for me. Never. But I've certainly come to the point where I understand that it was true. There was a certain day, and this certain thing did happen. And there's enough reason to believe it. There's certainly enough witnesses to it throughout that period. And it never turns out the way you think it's going to. There are twists and turns in this thing because men are blind. But I want you to know, when you see him hanging there, you have to deal with it just like those thieves on the cross. You can say as the one did, I'm going to join in the mocking. Or you can do as the other did and say, Lord, I'm a sinner. Please help me. Please remember me. I know you're the King. What? That's how God has decided to do this. Tim, you have the right to reject it. Or you have a right to say, this is persuasive. God's dealing with me and, whatever. Because that's how it is. It isn't Bill Moore. The Apostle Paul could stand here. He'd be a lot more interesting than Bill Moore. But I promise you this. He wouldn't be any more persuasive. The Holy Spirit doesn't persuade you. Bill Moore won't persuade you. The Apostle Paul won't persuade you. Think about it. How many times was Peter rejected? How many times does Paul get beaten? If you want to see what Paul does for his work when he converts, you just go to 2 Corinthians, about chapter 11. You'll see this litany of things. beaten 39 stripes 3 times, I think, isn't it, Lois? I mean, it's just, you see all these things, 39 stripes, because 40 would kill a man, so they would beat him. But he never quit saying it. Every time that they would say to him, you better shut up, he'd say, you know, Jesus came to me and told me this. This is what I'm going to do. You'll have to kill me. That's Christianity. It's not an add-on. It's a dividing line. It's a radical thing. Because of the way people like Bill Moore live, you might think it's not radical. I might not be a very good example of Christianity. But I'll tell you this, it's radical. You're turning your back on the world and its way of doing things, and you're saying, if Jesus tells me to go left, I'm going to go left. If he tells me to go right, I'm going to go right. It's not my job to tell him I don't understand or I don't like it. It's my job to obey. Okay? Why? Well, he's the king of the universe. He proved it. Tell me how many dead guys you know that are back to life and walking around 3 days later. What happened? I hope you enjoyed our little Bible study. If the idea of learning more about God intrigues you, consider joining us Monday nights at Arlington's 210 Broadway, downtown Springfield, for this study. You can be a part of it. The only thing that keeps you from it is you. Thanks.
If I walk in the pathway of duty, if I work to the close of the day, I shall see the great King in his beauty. When I've gone the last mile of the way,